Welcome to the Audible presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Stuart Mandel, joined as always by Bruce Feldman and by Ralph Russo. He is here, I promise, even if those of you who are watching this on YouTube cannot see him right now. So today's episode, we got a lot going on. We're going to go back and revisit our hottest and coldest preseason takes from the 2025 season. We're going to hit on some lingering headlines, including college football playoff changes that, for the most part, aren't happening. Lane Kiffin signing a big class, and an Alabama basketball case that we think could end up greatly impacting football. But first, guys, you may have heard that Dabo Swinney on Friday went off on Pete Golding and Ole Miss for tampering. The player at the center of this, Luke Farelli, a very good freshman linebacker at Cal, chose Clemson in the portal, signed, enrolled, was in class there, living there, and Ole Miss managed to convince him to go back in the portal and come over there. Well, Dabo came to his press conference Friday with receipts.
So at 1:30, Sorrells met with Luke face-to-face in his office. And Luke communicated to Jordan and to Ben Boulware that Pete texted him on Wednesday morning, the head coach at Ole Miss, when he was in his 8 a.m. class. And he said the text message said, "I know you're signed. What's the buyout?"
All right, Bruce, you don't often hear a coach, they rarely even call out specific schools publicly. They usually just complain about tampering in general. What do you think about him going into such detail and specifically singling out Pete Golding?
Yeah, it was significant. You don't see the detail, right? I mean, as you said, timestamps. It was a TikTok of how this allegedly unfolded. I mean, even to the point where he references, the GMs and the communication back and forth between the two schools, and talking about Austin Thomas, the GM at Ole Miss, where essentially he's revealing that Austin Thomas is throwing his new boss, Pete Golding, under the bus, and Pete Golding just does what Pete Golding does. I think it's going to be interesting to see where this goes with the NCAA, because the NCAA, it's going to be on their lap at this point, what they can prove, what they can take. But it's like you said, we've had innuendos, we've had coaches venting. I can't remember somebody coming with this kind of detail, standing at a podium for like 8 straight minutes, going off about it. I had talked to a few coaches, head coaches in college football over the weekend, and talked to one this morning, and I was like, asked their reaction. One in specific was like, I thought it was great. I mean, there's a lot of this goes on. People are sick of it. It's mostly third-party stuff where it's like, you know what? It's going to be hard to get at anybody for this. It just seems like that Pete Golding just said, screw it, according to Dabo, that I'm just doing this, whatever. And the coaches I spoke to were like, okay, now what's the NCAA and what is going to happen here? What's appropriate? If they find out he did what Dabo is alleging, then is it a significant financial punishment? Is it going to be a game suspension? What does the NCAA do? I think a lot of coaches are watching this because they are very frustrated by, and again, I think a lot of schools are doing some version of tampering, but is it as blatant as what this, according to Dabo, appears to be, Ralph?
So you're right. Good receipts here. And sorry you can't see my smiling, handsome face today. We're going to get that fixed, hopefully, by the next time we come up with our episode. But for those who are just listening to the podcast, all is well. Level of detail here is amazing, right? And as you said, Bruce, the other thing that's really relevant, this stuff tends to happen often with third parties. Like, how can you tamper with friends texting each other, right? So-and-so knows so-and-so knows so-and-so. And that's how they get the message to, hey, get in the portal, or, hey, don't sign with that team, or come over to ours. So this is really interesting. I don't know what the NCAA's situation here, and tampering is an NCAA thing. Tampering is not a college sports commission thing. What is a college sports commission thing is where money is involved that is relevant to the revenue sharing cap. There is some question as to where those things overlap in a situation like this. I think while Dabo is very focused on the tampering piece, it feels like to me, and this relates to the Mensah situation, to a certain degree to the Dedmond Williams situation, and some other things I've been sort of tracking behind the scenes. I think what schools are realizing is the way to deal with this, hey, somebody is going after a guy who I have already signed, right? I have a contract with this player. The best remedy is to hit him in the pocketbook. Okay, you want to tamper with this guy. Here's the buyout. Like Pete said, are you willing to pay double what you were going to pay for this linebacker, right? Like, you may like this kid, but do you like him at $1 million? Do you like him at 750 when you were planning on paying 250 or 300? So I think that there's some thought behind the scenes that to hell with enforcing the tampering piece of this. Like, yes, we want to enforce tampering, but really what we want to enforce here is pay me my money for making this kid, for making this kid. If you want this player and you want to break the contract, pay me.
And I think another thing, Ralph, that people may not realize is tampering in the NCAA rulebook is not all that serious. It's a level 2 violation, not level 1. So as much as coaches hate it or complain about it or make it seem like it's, so egregious, let's just assume that all those receipts, the NCAA says, yep, they tampered. Like, I don't think it would be that significant a penalty. Maybe Pete Golding gets suspended for a game. Of all the coaches, Kirk Ferentz actually got busted for tampering once and was a 1-game suspension. So to your point, I don't really know that is much of a deterrent. But pocketbook would be.
I think, Max Olson, our former colleague, and I did a big story on, we called it like the tamper portal. And it was interesting to hear coaches unload on this, and something that I had forgotten or didn't really, kind of think about this, because we all tend to think of things in the NCAA prism. One of the lawyers I talked to for some of the stuff we're going to get into today pointed out, in the free market, tampering happens all the time. There's plenty of people who get discussed. Full disclosure, I've talked to other companies while I'm under contract. Like maybe whether I have individually or somebody who represents me has, I think that happens quite a bit, right? I suspect it's happened with most people who are in the media at the very least to some degree, right? So again, I think it's a little different because we're so used to hearing it we tend to think of things as rules versus laws, right? Rules are things with the NCAA and laws are things that are way beyond it, right? But again, in the free market, it's a different story. So I don't know, Ralph, there's a bunch of things that are going on right now that are all kind of flow in with this. The Darian Mensah story with Duke / Miami. And Ralph, there's a big story that I'll be honest, I didn't pay a ton of attention to when I first started hearing about it. And then this weekend I did, coming out of Alabama. And there's some interesting kind of threads why that story matters. So why don't you fill people in if they haven't followed it?
The player's name is Charles Bediako, and he is returning to college basketball. He played for Alabama for a couple of years and declared for the draft, went undrafted, but did sign with D-League teams and had like 2-way contracts with the NBA. But he declared for the draft. He had a college career that ended with declaration for the draft, going into the draft early, and he moved on to a pro career. And now he is back playing for Alabama and played last weekend for Alabama. Why it is different from some of these other professionals that have returned, like Nanji, the player's name, Baylor player named Nanji.
James Nanji,
is that, again, Nanji never went to college. He declared for the draft, went to the G League, bounced around a little bit, and then has gone back to college. But he has never been in college, so he never declared coming out of college for the draft. That's a huge distinction, even though folks at Alabama are saying, no, it's not. So Sam Vecini wrote a big article about this for The Athletic about why there is such a huge distinction between Nanji, who never played in college, and Bediako, who played in college in 2023, left college and started a new career. I get it. There's all these pros coming back to college basketball. It's very weird. But Alabama and Greg Byrne came out and said, well, it's a distinction without difference. That's not true. Nanji was, it's a technicality and we could not like it, was cleared by the NCAA because they drew the line. The NCAA drew the line at you have not played in college before. In the past, European players came over and who had professional experience because in Europe you could be a 15-year-old and play professionally, right? And we were allowing those players to come and play college basketball. So legally, yes, I understand that legally there's a lot of vagueness here. Well, one player is a professional and he can play, and the other player was a professional, but he can't play. They definitely drew a line here to distinguish where the rule starts, right? If you played college basketball, you can't come back. And Alabama decided, to hell with it, we're gonna let the kids sue and we'll bring them in. So, of course, he gets an injunction and now he can play. And it's just very frustrating to see Alabama doing this after Greg Byrne was on our podcast begging for Congress to act to bring some sanity to college sports.
The SCORE Act is something we need to have passed to give us some guardrails for the long-term health of college sports. 31 of the 32 commissioners of the conference commissioners have supported it. The student athletic advisory committees have supported it. The NCAA has supported it. And nothing works long-term without regulation.
I got confused for a second when we replayed that clip because I think I might be wearing the same sweater I was that day. I got confused.
You only have so many sweaters, Stu.
So the point, Ralph, is, we won't pick on Greg too much because he's hardly the only one to say, we need guardrails, we need rules, we just want rules. And then these guys go out and break the rules. And I don't mean, in this case, I don't mean like cheating. I mean, Charlie Baker could not have been more clear about what like you said, right, the dividing line. Can't have played in college before, and can't have played for the NBA, right? So he knows that. Greg Byrne knows that, and they did it anyway. They, he's a 7-footer. He come in and help us win right away.
Stu, it's just so frustrating because what Alabama chose to do is be part of the problem. And I understand maybe I'm being naive because we're all just out to win, right? I understand that there is pressure to win and we're all just out to win. And if Nate Oates can improve his team, then he should try to improve his team, just like Scott Drew tried to improve his team. And by the way, Scott Drew, what they did, that sucks too. It sucks that they found the loophole, but at least they found a loophole. They didn't find a judge. And that's what Alabama did. So Alabama simply decided we are going to be part of the problem. After Greg Sankey has been talked about guardrails and rules, and Jerry Moorhead told Ross Dellinger, the SEC, we're just going to play by ourselves. We can't, if people don't want to follow rules, we'll just make our own rules. And so now you want to make your own rules? Fine. But here's Pete Golding out here blatantly tampering. The Lane Kiffin, the Damon Williams thing, everybody believes that was LSU. So what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, we're the ones who want to follow rules. We're going to create our own rules. It's just maddening. And again, this is not something personal on Alabama and Greg Byrne and Nate Oates and all these guys, but you say you want rules until they're applied to you.
Stu, I had to think about it. I was like, Jerry Moorhead is the Georgia president, right?
Sorry,
so
yes.
That's a name. Let me ask you, Stu, and if you want to weigh in on this ahead of time, go ahead. But one thing that I've always wondered, and it's been this way for years, dating back to my ESPN days, is like, why do you not consider the student athletes, as they were known, as employees? And I've had these conversations with lawyers. I've had these conversations with people in athletics. The one of the answers I had this with Rod Gilmore, former longtime ESPN guy, a lawyer who's really connected, especially at Stanford. And I said, what is the thing? Because I've now talked to a lot of coaches this winter who have not all across the board, but some of the smartest coaches I've talked to have all said they should just kind of drop the charade and have it as employees. You don't get into these NIL contracts says this or whatever. And so I'd asked him, and he really said it gets back to the liability issues of insurance. That's where he thinks it's such an issue for them. And it's funny that I didn't know Ralph was going to mention Jerry Moorhead's name, but when Rod Gilmore and I were talking, it was like I think probably the best scenario is you have this hybrid where players are students and they're employees of a separate entity, and then they form a separate association, so they're not in the line of fire of liability. The liability piece is a big thing. And one of the issues that we talked about where it becomes an issue is like legal stuff. Whereas like, what's the most prominent, headache that Kirby Smart has had the last few years? It's the car issues and the speeding. And, there's been concerns of excessive speeding and dangerous. And now all of a sudden, if you're employees, that puts them in a different place. And so it's a really interesting time here, because he was saying, look, right now you have revenue sharing. That's money directly coming from universities. So it kind of tips it over the top. And so it's become a harder argument to make. And I think that, again, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, Ralph. I think clearly you're frustrated because of they're trying to say they want rules, but they really don't want rules applied to them. And so they're all kind of seemingly to find loopholes or find stuff where they work. I mean, that's my interpretation. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, Stu. We haven't talked about this piece of it directly, but it was interesting to hear a lot of stuff this weekend about it.
I mean, you used the word charade, and I think that's definitely the case. There was a story late last week that Deion Sanders is going to start imposing fines on guys who show up late to practice or to meetings and whatnot. It's like, yeah, that's what you can do when they're your employee. I think that's right. I've heard that about the insurance part of it. But also, we on this podcast are focused on the richest schools in Division I. If there was a ruling tomorrow, all college athletes are employees, then you got to pay them at least minimum wage. Ohio State, that we're talking at Ohio State, that's hundreds of athletes, football, not football, who you're now paying a salary to. Ohio State can probably afford that. You know who can't? Pretty much everybody at least below the power conferences, or at the very least, Ralph, like the SWAC. What are some of those lower level Division I basketball conferences?
I think the SoCon,
all of those
and
schools would be
the
totally
Patriot
screwed.
League, and especially places like that where they don't even give scholarships, for God's sakes. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, distinguishing which athletes. You're right. If we could wave a magic wand and the football players and men's basketball players, maybe even women's basketball players, they're employees, that would work. But they can't all be employees, right? So it takes time, and they probably do need a law to distinguish between the couple, those differences, Stu.
Also, I would just say I wrote a column on Friday. So I think because there's been so many of these cases recently about pro basketball players coming back, that it's probably, if you're not a diehard college basketball fan, hard to, really care about. This one is significant because if it holds up, there's another hearing this week, the Alabama guy, I could absolutely see it coming over to football. Because to this point, it was, well, we don't really have to worry about this in football because all professional football players played 3 years in college, and so they can't come back. Well, here's a judge in Alabama saying, yep, you can come back. This guy hasn't played in 3 years, but it's within his 5-year eligibility clock, so he can come back. So think about what that means for college football. You could have all kinds of guys who turn pro early and either don't like where they were drafted or don't get drafted, you know what? I could make NIL more money NIL wise than that. I'm just going to come back. Or even take it one step past that. Like they get to training camp and they get cut. Well, in the past, that guy would have just had to like go latch onto a practice squad. Now, if this ruling holds up, call up your college coach, see if he's still got a spot for you, 2 weeks before the season starts. Nobody wants that.
On top of that, Stu, let's say that is a scenario. Somebody goes to mini camp, they get cut. All of a sudden now, especially if they graduated, they could go in the portal in theory and
I don't
go
even
to the
think
highest
they would need
bidder.
to go in the portal at that point, would they?
No, I'm saying because you graduated, you could pretty much go anywhere. And then all of a sudden you could have your own bidding war. Let's say a team comes out of spring practice and their D-line gets decimated. And now you can have some guy who, as you said, and I think it's a good point, doesn't get drafted. His opportunities are either go to try to play in the spring league or see if you can get a taker. I'm sure if you're good enough to have, played for a few years and gotten to a mini camp, you probably can get, $300,000 to $500,000 for somebody who wants an experienced, D lineman in that case. And I could see how that could be, again, I think there's be a lot of coaches who would want that because it gives them it falls back into the Greg Burns situation Ralph was referencing, where it's something where people don't like it until they can benefit from it.
That's exactly right. Hey, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right. I promised we were going to get to our predictions we got right and wrong, but first we just got a couple quick headlines to hit. Let's do this in rapid fire fashion, guys. Ralph, the deadline came and went on Friday with the college football playoff. What happened?
They did exactly what we figured they would do for many, many months, which is the college football playoff will be a 12-team event next year. Again, this was not surprising. The Big Ten and the SEC were in a bit of a stalemate. SEC wanted 16 teams. The Big Ten wanted to go to 24. The Big Ten had dropped the idea of going to automatic bids, multiple automatic bids, with the idea that, if we go to 24, there are so many teams, we can trust the selection committee. And maybe that's our way of negotiating with the SEC. We won't have the automatic bids, but we'll go to 24. And the SEC still wanted 16. And I think from the Big Ten standpoint, it saw value in not giving in to the SEC and letting next season play out, where everybody's going to have a 9-game conference schedule, including the SEC and the ACC, with a 12-team playoff to see if maybe minds change. And there are some different views of what a 12-team playoff and how big the playoff should be after a season of 12-team playoff, but with everybody playing 9 conference games. So that is going to be status quo for next year with a couple of tweaks, right? There's going to be the Power 4 conference champions all have automatic access as opposed to the 5 highest rated conference champions. And the group of 5 doesn't have to be a conference champion anymore, the highest rated group of 5 team. It just can be the highest rated group of 5 team. Doesn't have to be a champion. Notre Dame has access if it's in the top 12. So there's going to be some format tweaks yet again, but the main thing, how many teams, is staying the same. And it will be a 12-team playoff for at least one more year.
Wow, you kind of just said in passing, Notre Dame has a chance. That's the part people are so incredulous about. I get the reasoning. It's that now that you said the Power 4 champions are guaranteed a berth no matter what. So this was put in there as like, well, if it's Duke, right? If it's the ACC is going to get in an unranked champion, then Notre Dame, if it's in the top 12, is guaranteed a spot. Right?
Protected,
they can't
yes, it's
get
protected.
themselves a conference championship. But special treatment for Notre Dame, that does not go over well. I'll give a quick update on Darian Mensah. He last you heard, we're all waiting to see what happens in the case that Duke filed to try to prevent him from going in the portal. He did go in the portal, but the judge is not allowing him to enroll at a new school. So he's kind of caught in limbo. Late last week, they filed a motion to try to speed this up. And so the new hearing is going to be on Thursday. It's getting to the point, though, where is it too late for him to enroll for the next semester? So we'll wait and see. Either either we'll find out on Thursday or perhaps the parties reach an agreement before then, which I assume would be Darian Mensah or Miami pay up.
Yeah, it goes
and
back
then,
to
Bruce,
what
do
we
you think?
Sorry, I'm just want to say it goes back to what we had talked about during the tampering conversation. I think the way to get things in line here, it's just money. It always comes back to money. Pay out the buyout, and we can figure out a way to get beyond it. And also maybe that will be a little bit of a deterrent, though apparently Miami's ready to pay up whatever's needed.
Which, that's a whole other story. Where is all this money coming from? Whatever happened to the having to get anything above $600 approved? And then Lane Kiffin finished out the portal window with the bang. Bruce, tell us about who he got there at the end.
Well, he got Jordan Seaton, who is a former 5-star offensive tackle who was at Colorado for a couple of seasons, and very physically mature athlete who's one of these guys who takes care of his body like he's an NFL veteran, strict diet, everything, very athletic. This is a big upgrade. Now, look, 2 years ago, not coming into this past year, they had Will Campbell, who is an elite top 5 pick, who's going to be in the Super Bowl as a rookie for the Patriots, and a bunch of other really experienced offensive linemen. They tried to reshuffle the O-line and didn't work out very good. Right now, almost the entire an O-line room is going to be new guys, but Seaton is the most talented offensive lineman who is coming back to college football, I would think. So that's a big get for him. It's a big get for him, for Sam Levitt, the new quarterback. They've upgraded, some really good edge rushers. They still have Trey'Dez Green, who's probably the most talented offensive player they had left in the program at tight end. So we'll see. A lot of drama with Lane Kiffin, always is. But as you said, Stu, they got a huge get. I know Miami and a few other schools were trying to get Seaton, and I'd imagine LSU paid quite a bit to get him.
Yeah, based on the 24/7 rankings, transfer rankings, they got in this class the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 offensive tackle, the number 1 edge rusher, and the number 2 safety, who is Ty Benefield from Boise State, who's really good. So, I don't know, maybe I got to move him up even higher in the early top 25. I was trying to keep them below Ole Miss.
Yeah, no pressure, Lane. Just go out there and make the playoff next year, right? You're all set. You're the portal king. Go get it done.
Yep. We'll be right back with some hot takes and some cold takes. And we're back. As we put some of the finishing touches on the 2025 season, guys, I thought it would be fun to revisit some of our best and worst predictions from the preseason. To be clear, I had way more bad ones than good ones, but we'll spotlight a couple. Bruce, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to start with the bad ones because I had more than one, and I had more than one bad Clemson prediction. But I'm going to take the big picture, Clemson. I, by the way, picked Cade Klubnik to win the Heisman. That didn't happen. And I picked them to win the national title because, what's interesting is I'm looking at these, mock drafts. Daniel Jeremiah had his already, the first one. Bunch of Clemson dudes in the first round. Still weren't better than getting in the Pinstripe Bowl. So that was a really, really bad prediction that I heard a lot from my Fox colleagues about all season. And it got out wrong when they lost to LSU, and it just kind of went downhill from there, it felt like. My really good prediction was one I was holding for a little bit until the Notre Dame-Miami game, which was the opener, and it was about Malachi Toney. And the sources I trust inside the Miami coaching staff had been raving about him to me, and they were just like, just don't put it out too early or whatnot. So I waited till the night of the game or till going into the Notre Dame game, and I will read it to you because it doesn't make up for all the bad picks, but at least it gives me a little solace. Interested to watch Miami freshman receiver Malachi Toney. A Kane source told me, quote, he's the best young receiver I've ever been around. His footwork and separation skills are elite. He's a very unique kid. He doesn't act like a freshman. He won't be phased. He went off in that game and was probably as good a player as Miami has signed in a long, long time. Ralph, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, Malachi Toney was maybe one of the 3 or 4 best players on a team that played for a national championship as a freshman. So good job, Bruce. We're here about emphasizing the positives and trying to, kind of maybe downplay the negatives. So I also picked the wrong team to win a national championship. And picking Texas to win the national championship and not winning the national championship really isn't that bad, because Texas ended up finishing, can't remember what they finished in the AP poll, about 14th or 15th. That happens. Teams are picked number one and they have a 10-3 season. That's not really the worst thing in the world. That happens all the time. Where I went a little wrong and maybe went a little over, got out over my skis a bit, is after I visited Texas during the spring, I wrote a column coming into the season the day Texas was number one, or published the day Texas was number one in the AP poll, proclaiming Texas the new Alabama. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but within the context of the way it was written, it wasn't so much that they were going to win 7 national championships like Nick Saban. It was this idea that Texas was moving up to the spot and Alabama was moving out of the spot that would be the challenger to Georgia. That Alabama was going to be like slightly moving off the stage as a legitimate national title contender every year. By the way, kind of getting that right low key. And Texas was going to replace Alabama as the other superpower within the SEC. Again, they're not going to win 7 national championships, but they were going to rise up to a place where they were going to be. It was going to be Georgia and Texas as opposed to Alabama and Georgia as the 2 superpowers of the SEC. That didn't work out that great. Like, I might be early, not wrong. Because who knows, next year, Texas might end up being right back to where I thought that they would be. But when you lose your opening game and then you lose another one in September to Florida, and trust me, I had that column being tweeted back at me constantly this season. Every time Texas lost, and they lost 3 times, I had more people being, hey, is this you? Did you say this? How you feeling about this take? So it's already been on freezing cold takes. It was a terrible idea. Conceptually, I don't think I was that far out there, but it definitely landed like a wet sock. I don't even, what was my best one? I don't know. I had Notre Dame not making the playoff. So
I was thinking that was going to be yours because I remember that from the episode we did.
Yeah.
Where you had that formula, right?
Yes.
For how to, and we were both a little surprised you didn't have Notre Dame in the playoff.
Yeah. So I didn't have Notre Dame in the playoff, so I'll take that. And I had a pretty good call, but Stu had an even better call, so I'll leave you because I was on board with one of your good calls, Stu. But what was your worst?
I mean, Penn State. I honestly can't remember at this point if I picked Penn State or Texas to win the national championship because it kept going back and forth. But the point is that was even a consideration. And it's not just like, oh, you misjudged their offensive line or something like that. It's that I knew better. I knew James Franklin was not going to be the coach to win the national championship at Penn State. I had all of this evidence, and I said, but they just have so much back. I'm going to ignore that. And I shouldn't have done that. Turns out he gets fired halfway through the season. They go 7-6 Pinstripe Bowl champions. There's a lot of others like that. I don't want to make it seem like that. I mean, I think I had LSU in the top 5. None of my top 5 teams in the early top 25 last year even made the playoff. In terms of what I got right, I think you're referring to Texas A&M. I had them in the playoff as I don't think in the end it seemed all that shocking, but it was a not common playoff pick at the time. But guys, what I really want to pat myself on the back for, because we didn't specify it had to be this preseason, is my coaching grade hires from 2024, in which I gave Indiana an A for hiring Curt Cignetti. Great coaches can win at any level, and that's exactly what Cignetti has done over the past 13 seasons. He led Indiana PA to the Division II quarterfinals, Elon to consecutive FCS playoffs, and James Madison to an FCS national championship game. And upon the program's move to FBS, a top 25 season in year 2, the Hoosiers are in great hands.
Speaking of hands, I'm raising mine, Stu, when you're handing out the grades. You were an easy grader. I would have loved to have had you in junior college.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Bruce. Thank you.
Who did you give C's and D's to that year?
Yeah, so you were right about that, and our editor has given me that same feedback. So when I do this year's, I have pledged to
No,
be harsher.
what about a couple of years ago?
I mean, the hypocritical thing about me giving myself a pat on the back for that is that right below that, Michigan, A, Sharon Moore.
Well done.
Michigan, Houston, A-, Willie Fritz. That's good.
That's good.
Michigan State, A-, Jonathan Smith. Who did I give C's and D's to? Syracuse, a C+ for Fran Brown. I don't know how I feel about that right now. Mississippi State, C for Jeff Lebby.
Sure, he's definitely out on that one.
Boston College, C- for Bill O'Brien.
Okay.
There you go, Stu.
And Oregon State, a D for Trent Bray. I feel like every year there is one of those that's like, oh yeah, that's the D. Like that's the D or that's the F. Bill Belichick being that last year. So usually we do get, I can't remember a time where I gave somebody a D or F and they turned out to be great. But it is harder in the other direction.
Can I say just one thing before we head out on this? I think, because this was, we had talked about this a lot at the beginning of the year. This was my first year being an AP top 25 college football poll voter after years of sort of overseeing the poll and being on the other side of the curtain. And I do find myself thinking back to my preseason rankings, and I'm going to I'll probably write a column about like learning some lessons from last year. And I do think most of the lessons I learned were to try to stick with my first instinct a little bit. Like I was skeptical about South Carolina, a little more skeptical about Clemson coming into the year than most of the common consensus was. I was a little more skeptical about Illinois. I actually had Indiana ranked a little higher than. Now I didn't have them in the top 10, so I'm not going to claim a win on Indiana, but I do find myself thinking like when I think back to all my judgment calls and predictions that were tied to the poll, I had a few more hits that could have been even stronger hits if I had stuck to my guns and been leaned into my skepticism on certain teams, as opposed to letting, I think, consensus influence me.
Yeah, I hear you. Groupthink is hard to avoid. I actually remember in the preseason being surprised that people were assuming Indiana was going to go back to being mediocre. And like, I think you guys are sleeping on them, but I still 9-3. I had Indiana going 9-3. I wish I had been like, actually, let's just throw caution to the wind and say they go back to the playoff. But you have that instinct telling you like, but you could end up looking like an idiot. And the answer, and of course you end up looking like an idiot anyway.
There are plenty of chances for us to look like idiots, and we absolutely capitalize on them.
I'm guessing right now, even though we can't see your face, you're looking like an idiot right now, Ralph.
I couldn't be more frustrated with this technical issue. So yeah, it's really thrown me off my game. Thank you very much for carrying me this show.
Hopefully we'll see your smiling face on Thursday's episode. Remember, every episode of the Audible is on YouTube at Audible Show. Quick programming note, a couple of quick programming notes. This offseason, we're going to take some time and do an off-season preview for each power conference. I'm going to start this Thursday with the national champion of conferences, the Big Ten. If you have burning Big Ten questions, either about a specific team or about a conference, or about the conference itself, heading into the offseason, send them to the audiblepod@gmail.com. And let me just give you a little bit of extra incentive, guys. Big news on the mailbag front. Even though the college football playoff is not expanding from 12 to 16, the Trader Joe's gift card is going up from $12 to $16. Whoever asks the best question that gets selected for the show is going to now get a $16 Trader Joe's gift card. Bruce, I know you would put that to good use.
I would. It's funny. I don't know if our friend at Trader Joe's, John, had thought about that, or because I think a lot of fans right now would go, how come the Big Ten didn't get its way? I would love $24 instead of $16.
We'll have to check if that's a possibility. A lot of people suddenly rooting for Tony Petitti to get his way. All right, again, that's the audiblepod@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.